Go.
What's going on, guys? I'm here with Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA. How you doing, Charlie?
I'm doing okay. I'd be better if we found this maniac that punched Hayden in the face.
So what do you think should happen to this guy that committed assault against one of the people here?
Well, I hope he gets found, and I hope that he gets, for lack of a better term, charges put against him. I mean, whatever the rule of the law says, I want that applied to him. You know, I don't want anything unusual to happen other than what he did, which was battery and assault. And I mean, I'm gonna just everyone should think this through. If he was wearing a MAGA hat, if he was a conservative, and he would have punched a liberal in the face, I can guarantee you he would have been arrested by now. Guarantee it, without a shadow of a doubt. They would have SWAT teams over this campus looking for this guy, and he hasn't been. And that's really sad. It's really sick. What it does is it gives space and it gives tolerance for violence. Because what's going to prevent it from happening again if these people like that are not going to be held accountable for committing crimes against conservatives?
Right. So, do you feel like this is a problem that's unique to Berkeley, or do you feel like this has happened at other? Has this ever happened at another campus, like someone getting assaulted?
Yes, but this was obviously one of the worst I've seen. You saw the video.
Yeah.
It's not good. And I'm going to be honest, I'm stunned at the police's lack of response here. Now, by the time this video goes up, maybe they'll have a change of heart. I don't know about that. But I'm definitely going to tell you that this is it's not heading in the right direction. This guy should have been swiftly found, swiftly arrested, swiftly held accountable. None of that happened. Instead, it creates tolerance for violence, and that's a really sad day if that's really what's happening here in Berkeley. But I'll give the police a little more time, a little benefit of the doubt. But as of right now, I'm very disappointed.
How do you feel like the left kind of promotes this ideology of hate towards conservatives that kind of justifies why some people might think it's okay to hit a conservative?
Well, look, I mean, they keep on saying hate has no home here, hate versus love. What he did was hateful. I mean, look, they are becoming a more and more violent group. They're becoming more and more intolerant, and that's really sad. And look, I will always defend a leftist's right to be wrong. I will let them say what I will allow them to speak their mind, and we will allow them to be able to agree to disagree. And they don't have that right now in their ranks. And if there are liberals that are like that, great. But there should be a nation that right now the entire campus should be outraged by this. And it seems like right now the administration and the campus police is just another thing. And again, this is a hate crime, an actual hate crime, not like the fake hate crime that Jussie Smollett staged in Chicago. This was a real hate crime, and it happened right here, just feet from where we're standing, and this maniac is walking free from what I understand. There's something very wrong about that.
And who would you say is to blame mainly? Would you say it's the liberal media and outlets like CNN? Do you feel like they're responsible for essentially promoting this justification to hit conservatives, or where do you think the blame is really?
I mean, I think there's a lot of people to blame for it. The university, the culture that's created here on these campuses, where conservatives are deemed to be evil people, the media, all sorts of different places. But irregardless, there's no excuse for this. I mean, we could point blame all day long. We just have to say there's something wrong here, and it should be corrected and fixed. And I'm very, very disappointed right now with how this is being handled, and it's very troubling that a conservative can't be on campus without getting punched in the jaw.
I agree. And do you feel like coming here today, do you feel like this is part of kind of winning the culture war, you could say,
yeah,
and making it so that people have to be exposed to, conservative ideas?
I mean, I would like to think so. Look, I mean, that's what we at Turning Point USA try to do. We understand we're not going to win 50% of the Berkeley campus over. We understand that, but we should still be allowed to talk. We should still be allowed to have conversations. And you look at how committed this group of students are here. I mean, it's raining, it's cold, it's windy. Last week there was a hate crime committed against one of them. They're still out here recruiting, and so that's a really amazing thing, and something that really should be applauded and appreciated.
Have you noticed any long-term trends? Do you feel like over time you've been able to kind of win this type of cultural war over freedom of speech?
I mean,
is it going your way, or do you feel like it's going the opposite direction?
It's too early to tell. In some places we had some big victories, in some places we really moved the dial. I will say this, that it's not going to get any better if we don't fight, and that's one of the biggest things we have to continue to do.
And I just wanted to ask you a quick question regarding the border wall. There's, it's been in the news, lately, just about the National Emergency Act, and there's a lot of debate between Republicans whether this was, justified, whether this is something that's extra constitutional, that's that's unjustified. Would you agree with that critique, or do you say that it was a good idea for him to declare national emergency?
Look, I don't like power going to the executive, but this is well within his constitutional framework to do this, and so I do support it. It is an emergency. I wish Congress would have done it, though. That would have been my ideal way to go about it. That would have been my ideal way. So,
are you worried at all that Democrats might get into power later and try to use the same type of expansion of executive power?
I sympathize with that argument. I really do. And
Okay.
I'm a limited government guy, so I sympathize with it. But he's left with very few options here. The southern border has been open for 30 to 40 years. There's drugs, there's crime, illegals flowing into this country, and it is an emergency. And you can directly correlate human suffering and human carnage to an open border. And so if it's within his framework and power to solve it, it is. But look, I wish it wouldn't have to be through the executive. That's the conservative limited government guy, and it could be abused in the future. But so I sympathize with that. But it's also a little bit of a slippery slope argument, right? Which is inherently a logical fallacy. So we have to be careful not to do that. Instead, we have to critique why is this particular instance an emergency or not an emergency. Does that make sense?
Right.
But I do understand that there is an extension of how this could be abused in the future, and it could set a dangerous legal precedent. I understand that. I think that argument has some merit, but I still do support it.
You think it has some merit, but you just don't think it's.
No, look.
You think the benefits outweigh the.
That's correct. Yes, and I'm trying to be intellectually consistent here,
Okay.
and I think it's a fair way to go about processing instances like this. So
It just seems like in the long term, just like what you were saying, like if Democrats did get into power and
they could declare a national emergency around
for gun
climate change.
control or
Yeah.
climate change or any of those things. Don't you? But it just seems like from listening to you that you're kind of on the fence a little bit.
Not on the fence. No, I totally support it
Right.
because I believe there is a sense of urgency in securing the border. But I don't like power going to the executive. I don't care who's in office. Right.
Okay.
So that's the way I process it. So
But you're still in favor of the
Yeah.
Emergency Act, even though you don't like expansion of executive power.
that's correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. So cool.
And the last thing I was going to ask is just
Sure.
So even if let's say this ends up going to the Supreme Court, it gets they say that it is justified, that it is within his power. Do you think that a wall really would be able to stop things like drugs from getting across the border,
Well-
or do you feel like a lot of it's just going to get through anyways, through the ports of entry?
Look, don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
95% of Border Patrol agents say a wall would help make their job easier to stop the flow of drugs, stop the flow of guns, stop human and child sex trafficking. If walls totally don't work, then why don't the Democrats support tearing down all the walls right now? Some of them do. It's crazy.
Because it would be expensive, right?
Well, I mean, fine. How about no patrolling whatsoever? Here's the thing: is that if you have a physical barrier, it makes it harder to come across the southern border. It's harder to do child sex trafficking, so on and so forth. And look, we have secured the borders of other nations quite easily, whether it be the border of Israel and Syria, whether it be North and South Korea, whether it be Afghanistan and the bordering nations. We're able to have huge border reconnaissance projects that we've done in the last 20, 30 years. For whatever reason, we have an unwillingness to do so on our own southern border. And look no further than just some of the damage that illegals have done to this country. And that's something we have to continue to talk about.
Isn't the Israel wall, I don't know if you're referring to the southern wall with Egypt, but isn't that kind of like not necessarily the best example, considering it's only 150 miles long compared to, it's a 2,000-mile border, on the southern border. Is that really good?
Israel has hundreds of miles of wall and fencing, whether it be with the Palestinian Authority or with Egypt or to the north to the Golan Heights. Irregardless, they did build a reinforced barrier border structure in the last decade, which has proven to be successful. And I could point to other examples across the world. But if we were serious about it, we use high technology, drone reconnaissance, cutting edge innovation, Border Patrol agents, DHS. We could secure this border if we were serious about this. If we had enough willpower, we could secure this border.
Usually the critique I usually hear from people on the left will just say well they could just use a ladder, or technology might change, and who knows, 20 years from now drones might be able to lift people up and over the wall. How do we know that the wall, we might spend all this money on the wall and then it just might get defeated by a ladder or something like that?
Don't take my word for it.
Yeah.
Talk to Border Patrol agents in areas where they have built fencing and have built the wall. Border crossings have gone down dramatically, such as right near El Paso, and I completely totally support building the wall. And the statistics show that when there's fencing, when there's a border wall that's built, it makes it harder to cross. And if the Democrat position is we don't want to to do anything at all whatsoever with securing the border, then they should just say that, if that's their position. So.
Well, it sounds to me like their position is more just what you were saying about the drone security and just things like sensors, anti-tunneling, or like trying to do something more about people, overstaying on visas. Like, is there any like solutions towards those kinds of problems as far as
look, it can be
overstaying visas?
It can be comprehensive. If someone overstays a visa, they should be deported. I mean, I'm very much in support of that. So.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.